Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this important webinar on artificial intelligence, or AI, and its potential influence on our upcoming local elections. My name is Melissa Randall, and I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri School Boards Association. With AI becoming more and more influential, it's vital for all of us in local government to understand its impact on our operations, including local elections. There are many positive things AI can offer, but as with any tool, AI can also be used as a weapon. This webinar will explore the implications of AI deepfakes and other AI measures, highlighting the importance of being informed and proactive. This webinar is being brought to you today through the Local Leaders Partnership, a long-standing relationship between MSBA, Missouri Municipal League, and the Missouri Association of Counties. We are honored to partner with our good friends at MML and MAC. I'm going to ask both executive directors to introduce themselves and make opening remarks before we get started. Richard Sheets, the executive director of Missouri Municipal League, thank you for joining us. I'll let you get started first.
Thank you, Melissa. Trust in our electoral process is really at a low ebb right now, and the introduction of artificial intelligence, especially if it's used for devious purposes, just going to heighten that mistrust of our election. And I believe it's our responsibility as associations to educate the public and our local officials on ways to identify these deep fakes and misinformation. And this webinar will provide that techniques for our public officials to educate the public on artificial intelligence deep fakes.
Very good. Yeah. All right, Steve Hobbs, Executive Director of MAC, thank you for joining us. And what do you have to say about this topic?
So first of all, I want to thank the Missouri School Boards Association for organizing and putting this event together. It's really important to us with the Missouri Association of Counties. We represent 1,480 elected officials, county locally elected officials statewide. Importantly, for our conversation here today, we also represent the election authorities. And in our conversation today, we're going to talk about how artificial intelligence has multiple good uses. But there are also things that we need to educate ourselves as a general public and as elected officials on how artificial intelligence could be used for more nefarious purposes. And so I think this is a really important subject for us to be talking about together as a group.
Thank you, Steve and Richard. Those were great points. And we're going to start with a broad overview of AI so that we're all on the same page. Mark Henderson, MSBA's Director of Digital Initiatives, will introduce the topic and set the tone for a constructive and informative session. Then you'll hear from Bob Klausmeyer, who is MSBA's Director of K-12 Safety. He'll briefly explain what deepfakes are. And then at the end of the webinar, we will answer your questions, or we'll attempt to. You can submit your questions at any time. Just click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen and then type your questions into the box. And we'll, with time permitting, we'll do what we can to answer what questions that you have about this important topic. So take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Melissa, and hello, everyone. My name is Mark Henderson, and for the next few minutes, I'm going to give you a quick overview of artificial intelligence, or AI, as it's commonly called. As you know, there are many important elections in 2024 at the local, state, and federal levels, and with these elections comes great concern from citizens about how AI will impact voting. A poll by the Associated Press found that 6 in 10 adults think AI will increase the spread of false and misleading information during this year's elections. And this is a bipartisan concern. Of those surveyed by the AP, 58% of Democrats, 44% of independents, and 58% of Republicans believe that AI will increase misinformation. Let's look specifically at some of their concerns. 53% are concerned with voters using AI chatbots to learn information about a candidate or ballot issue, information which may or may not be correct. 62% are worried about candidates using AI to tailor their political advertisements to individual voters. And a whopping 83% of those surveyed are worried about candidates using AI to create false or misleading images or videos for political advertisements. One of the biggest concerns is with deepfakes, which we'll talk more about in a few minutes. 8 states have already enacted laws regarding the use of deepfakes for political campaigns, while 4 others have proposed deepfake laws. But as of now, Missouri does not have a law concerning the political use of deepfakes, nor does such a law exist at the federal level. Before we talk about AI, let's take a trip back 30 years to 1994. It's hard to believe 94 was 30 years ago, but here we are. Now, you may have seen this clip of the Today Show as it went viral a couple of years ago. Let's take a look.
Oh, that's
that
right.
little mark with the A and then the ring around it.
At?
See, that's what I said. Katie said she thought it was about.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'd never heard
Or
it.
around
I'd never
or
heard it
about.
said. I'd always
That's
seen the
right.
mark, but never heard
Yeah.
it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence at NBC. There it is. Violence at NBC. GE.com. I mean,
Well, Allison should know. What do you
is
say to that,
internet
Allison?
anyway?
Internet is that
Massive computer
right,
network.
the one that's becoming really big now.
What do you mean? That's big. How does one? What do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
Now, we can all chuckle at the ignorance of how those folks felt about the internet back in 1994, but we can also relate to it when it comes to the topic of AI. You're hearing a lot about AI these days, and you'll likely have questions like, what is AI? Is AI good or bad? How does AI work? And how will it impact you? The good news is that you're not alone. We're all on a journey to understand this emerging technology better. So what is artificial intelligence anyway? Well, in simple terms, AI is a machine's ability to perform tasks normally done by humans. This includes things like learning from previous experiences, solving complex problems, and making decisions. In a sense, it's a computer or a robot with a brain. Now, you may not realize it, but you're already using AI. Here you can see a few examples. If you use social media, AI helps determine which content and advertising you see based on your previous habits. If you use a digital assistant like Siri or Alexa, you're interacting with AI. If you use a Maps app to help you navigate, it's AI that's determining the best routes for you to take. And if you've ever chatted with a bot on a website to help you get information or perform a task, you've talked to AI. And if you've ever been typing and the words pop up before you push the keys, that's AI predicting what you're about to write. So the big question that people are struggling with is deciding whether AI is good or bad. And the answer is neither. AI isn't good, AI isn't bad, AI is just a tool that humans can use however they wish. Let's think about how tools are used. For example, a hammer can be used for good things like building a birdhouse, or bad things like breaking into a car. Hammers aren't good or bad, they're just tools being operated by humans. AI is the exact same way. Now, AI is a huge topic, so let's focus on one particular type called generative AI. This is a machine's ability to create original text, images, video, audio, just about anything you can think of. These are creative tasks that until recently were only doable by humans, but now AI tools can create original media in just seconds by being told what to do. The biggest generative AI program today is called ChatGPT. You've likely heard of it, maybe you've even used it. Let's take a look at how it works. As the name implies, ChatGPT is a chat between you and a machine. You simply tell it what you want it to create, and in seconds, the program completes your request. It's not pulling this information from somewhere on the internet, it's creating original content. ChatGPT has only been around for a little over a year, but in that time, it's become the most downloaded app of all time. In fact, over 100 million people use it every week. Here you can see the cover of Time magazine from March of 2023, in which Time used ChatGPT to explain itself. You don't get on the cover of Time magazine unless you're a pretty big deal. With this emerging technology, there are positive aspects as well as concerns. Some positives of generative AI are that it's easy to use. You don't need to be a computer programmer to use it. It can also save a lot of time in your personal and professional life. What used to take hours of human work can now be done by AI in just seconds. Generative AI is also affordable, with many programs being free or low cost for users. Of course, there are concerns about generative AI tools as well, such as data and privacy issues. When you put data into an AI tool, it is now out in the world and there's no way to get it back. You also shouldn't assume that the information provided by AI is going to be correct. These tools are only as good as the information they are provided, so always review what's given and determine for yourself if it's accurate. Another major concern is humans using AI for manipulation. It's easy for anyone to create misleading or inaccurate content that can be shared and spread online. MSBA is here to help you understand the ever-changing world of AI. We've created a page on our website that contains information on AI as well as links to helpful resources. We encourage you to bookmark this page and visit it from time to time, as we will update it with new information and tools as they become available. Just go to mosba.org and search for AI resources. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I may not always have the answers, but I'll do my best. And now I'd like to turn things over to my colleague, Bob Klossmeyer.
Thank you, Mark, for letting me join you today. Hello, everyone. My name is Bob Klossmeyer, and I am the Director of K-12 Safety for the Missouri School Boards Association, which is a recent addition to MSBA's overall school safety initiative and an added resource in addition to the Center for Education Safety. I'd like to spend a few minutes discussing some growing safety concerns related to this tool that Mark has so cleverly described. My goal here is to explain some recent concerns related to artificial intelligence, or AI, and how it is being used for political influence, primarily when it comes to misleading information directed at candidates and issues on the ballot. Remember those days not so long ago when phishing emails and email scams were our biggest concern, and we just had to avoid that clicking the link? Well, those days are still here, but now we have an added concern of AI-generated photos or videos that are not real, yet may look so realistic. We have to closely review every image to make sure we believe what we're seeing. So, what are these images and videos? Well, they're called deepfakes. Imagine you have a photo or a video of someone and it looks real, like they are really saying or doing something, but here's the tricky part, it's not actually them. It's made by that tool Mark told you about, AI. AI can learn how a person looks and moves by studying lots of photos and videos of them. Then it can create a new photo or video that seems totally genuine but is actually fake. So, deepfake photos and videos are like tricky illusions made by computers, making it seem like people are doing or saying things they never did in real life. It is important to be aware of this because sometimes special interest groups use deepfakes to spread false information, especially during political campaigns or when attempting to influence the public into supporting an extreme agenda. While it is becoming more and more difficult to tell the difference between a real image and a deepfake, there are some things to look for. Check for odd movements or expressions. Deepfake photos might have strange or unnatural movements, especially in facial expressions of the people in the video. If something looks a bit off or too perfect, it could be a sign. Look for inconsistencies. Pay attention to the details like lighting and shadows. If the lighting on a person's face doesn't match the surroundings, it could be a deepfake. Also, check for the odd reflections in their eyes. Some examples may be skin that appear too smooth or too wrinkly, shadows near eyes and eyebrows that seem out of place. An unusual blinking or no blinking at all is another common sign. Listen to the voice. In some deepfake videos, the voice might not match the person's lip movements or may sound a bit robotic. If it seems out of sync or not quite right, it could be a sign of manipulation. Investigate the background. Sometimes deepfake creators struggle to make the background realistic. Look for inconsistencies, like objects that seem out of place or don't move correctly with the rest of the scene. Check for unusual artifacts. Deepfake images and videos can sometimes have strange pixelation or artifacts, especially around the edges of a person's face or body. If you see unusual distortions, it might be a sign of manipulation. Compare with real photos or videos. If possible, compare the suspicious content with known real photos or videos of the person. Look for any significant differences in appearance, behavior, or surroundings. Use technology. There are some online tools and apps designed to detect deepfakes. Encourage the use of trusted tools to analyze the content for any signs of manipulation. Be skeptical of unusual contexts. If the content seems too sensational or out of character for the person involved, it might be worth questioning its authenticity. If something seems fishy and you're just not sure, ask MSBA. We're all here to help. According to a 2021 study, most people think they can easily spot a deepfake. However, when tested, over 40% of people were fooled into thinking a deepfake was real. Let's give it a try. Here's a photo of shaking hands. Seems clear enough, but do you think it is real or fake? How about this photo? Real or fake? The image on the left one is actually fake, while the one on the right is real. What signs do we have that the left one is fake? One sign is there are too many fingers on one of the hands. Another sign is the inconsistency of the knuckles on the fingers. AI is good, but it's not perfect, and it tends to have trouble generating hands correctly. We understand it is not always easy to identify deepfakes. A good rule is to treat them just like you treat your emails. Take your time and think before acting or believing. Follow and share with others these simple rules. Don't believe everything you see. Do your own research, and if it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. Overall, trust your instincts. And again, don't be afraid to ask for help, as you are never alone. You have us. Ask MSBA. Now we're going to watch a short video from the website AI and You about how deepfakes and other forms of AI can impact this year's elections. Let's take a look.
Elections have always been about connecting with voters. Campaigns will try almost anything to get your attention and vote. The 2024 election will require you to protect your vote because of recent advancements in artificial intelligence, AI. So how exactly is AI influencing the 2024 election? Number one, instead of a one-size-fits-all campaign, AI enables hyper-personalized messaging, reaching voters with issues that matter most to them, and swaying voters with true or false information. Analyzing voter data is invaluable. By analyzing real-time data, campaigns can adjust their strategy, making outreach more effective. The efficiency of AI is unmatched, but it's not without its challenges, and the 2024 election will bring unprecedented amounts of disinformation to you, the voters. So what is misinformation or disinformation, and how is it created? To put it simply, misinformation is false. It is information created to trick voters. It is a campaign video created with AI to make you believe something about a candidate that is not true. It is a phone call that sounds like a candidate, but it is actually AI. It is a personalized fundraising letter created with AI. The most prevalent tool for misinformation is called Deepfakes. Number two, no deepfakes. Deepfakes are hyper-realistic but entirely fake content pieces that can be used to spread misinformation. In the past, creating a deepfake would require someone in technology, like someone who writes computer code. Not anymore. Deepfakes can be created by someone from their laptop at home. It's becoming harder to differentiate accurate content from AI-generated ones, and we won't get there in time to navigate truth from fiction during this campaign season. The most troubling aspect of deepfakes is there are no guardrails to protect you as voters. There are no rules, regulations, or consequences related to creating false information during the campaign to protect voters against false news, disinformation, or false narratives. Voters must independently research key issues to determine what is true and false. Undecided and new voters are expected to be the targets of political misinformation, which is critical given that the election is expected to be decided by a small percentage of voters in 2024. Remember that not all AI in elections is misinformation. Campaigns also use AI for positive engagement. For example, virtual assistants or chatbots help answer voter inquiries, ensuring accessibility and connection. And local communities can easily leverage new AI tools to organize and mobilize voters. It begins with searching for the best options to meet your needs. The challenges of election misinformation are global issues at all levels of political campaigns. In Toronto, a candidate in the mayoral election who vowed to clear homeless camps released a set of campaign promises illustrated by AI, including fake dystopian images of people camped on a downtown street and a fabricated image of tents set up in a park. Number three, what must you do to protect your right to vote based on accurate information? Well, the answer is do not believe anything you see, read, or hear until you have researched it in the 2024 election. You will not be able to rely on any one source, whether it is online, on TV, or in the press. Deepfakes are not online only. Broadcast TV networks cannot alter political commercials, which could also be deepfakes. It won't be easy, but do your research to protect your right to vote. To wrap it up, do not believe anything you see, read, or hear in any election. Do your research. Seek trusted sources confirming political deepfakes. Most importantly, protect our democracy and protect your right to vote.
Well, thank you, Mark and Bob, for your explanations of AI and deepfakes. I hope that information helps you understand the technology that we're concerned with. All right, Richard and Steve, I'm going to throw this out to both of you and like your perspective, both of your perspectives on this particular question, because it's a big one. What are the potential risks and threats from your association's perspective that are going to be posed by AI in the upcoming local election?
So one of the things I thought of immediately is that when we talk about deepfakes, that, people have become so dependent on social media to get their information, and the possibility of in an election cycle, a post could be made using artificial intelligence, changing a polling location, and potentially disenfranchising voters because they go to where they thought the location was going to be and there was nobody there. Do they have time to go back to the original one? I think one of the things I would really like to caution folks about is pay attention to what your local election authority tells you about polling locations and times. They are the authority on that. Don't depend on other avenues to get your information. The local election authority has that information, and you can count on it.
Yeah, I think it's one of the fears I have is the distrust of the electoral process I mentioned earlier, and so I think once election happens, I fear that the results of the election would not be, accepted by many, and just breed the continued controversies, and that disrupts our smaller and larger communities. It just disrupts our local operations because the outcome of our local elections may be in dispute, and that's just not a healthy situation.
So we've seen some information from the experts on what a deep fake, how you might be able to identify a deep fake video. But let's talk about how you can help as candidates, as local candidates, how you can help educate your community on what to do if you suspect that a deep fake video might be circulating.
I think asking questions. I mean, not just accept it, just face value. If you see something, ask the person who's running, and especially in communities, they're your neighbors. You can go to the candidate and ask. It's different from the national and statewide election, but for local elections, you can go right to the source and ask. And we need to encourage that. And then from our public officials, our candidates, our elected officials need to be open, and they need to be communicating and have contact with their voters and constituents.
I think if the general public would look at just being patient, I know sometimes it's very easy to see something and just hit share. Yep. And instead, if you see something that doesn't seem right, and with artificial intelligence, sometimes it's very difficult to know. But verify the facts before you repost. Talk to the candidate. Candidates also need to be very vigilant about monitoring what is being said during their race and what is not being said. And I think it's going to bring a whole new sense of awareness to candidates as well as the general electorate on what is being said in these races and trying to find out what is true.
What can candidates do to protect themselves from the threats of deepfakes?
Steve, do you have any insights?
So let me think about this a little bit.
Yes.
Well, I just talked to you a little bit about being vigilant.
Yes.
That means it's going to require you as candidates to have people that are watching various social media outlets and seeing what is being posted and what is being said. People that know you that can say, wait a minute, this post doesn't seem right. Mm-hmm. And the accusations that are being made are not correct, and immediately paying attention to those and saying, oh no, it's just on X, it'll go away. Mm-hmm. No, that won't happen. So being able to address issues and saying, look, this is not true, and communicating that with the voters, that is the most important part. I think with artificial intelligence, as we've seen in our daily lives, we found out that one-on-one communication in person is more important now than it has ever been in our lifetimes. And it will continue to be the most important aspect of communication that we're going to be able to use.
I think that's powerful, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, I think Steve's absolutely right, and it's in our communities, in our cities, and our counties, we need to be close to the voters, and we are, and we need to, as Steve indicated, communicate and be open with our constituents, and not just rely on social media or the newspapers to express the messages and contact the voters. They need to be on the street talking with them, and I think, as Steve indicated, that's what's really going to resolve some of these problems with, or help resolve some of these problems with these fake information. But it's that personal contact where the voters have assurance and confidence in that candidate or that public official.
And AI has some wonderful opportunities
It does.
for our local candidates, even our statewide candidates, to give them opportunities to help them write speeches, to produce press releases. There's so many opportunities with that are available to candidates now that they will be able to use to help them get their message out, while at the same time they need to be very careful about fake information that's put out about them and be watching for that constantly, because what is available for good is also available for bad.
Right. All our technology is always a good side and a bad side, and it's that balance.
So when we were talking about the good that can be done with artificial intelligence, I was thinking about this before we were planning on doing this. I was in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago, and the director of the National Association of Counties, which we partner with, him and his 6th grade son spent a weekend, and they created a book. It's an educational book. It's called The Marvelous Adventures of County Land, and it's educating 4th graders about county government, all created with artificial intelligence. What a great tool to use in our 4th grade classes. And it's got rhymes for every portion of it, kind of like a Dr. Seuss book. But he shared with us some of the pitfalls of how to train the machine, is what he called it, to develop this document, and some of the things they had to work through. But he also talked about some of the problems that come about with this, is because before something like this can be put together, there's still a lot of questions to be asked about copywriting and some legal questions. We are needing some help at the federal level and at the state level for guidance on some of the uses for artificial intelligence for good. That's one example from countywide. What are you seeing with the school boards and your members on how there are good uses for this?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. That's a great example of how AI can give us some tools that we really didn't have access to without an incredible amount of resources poured into developing something like that. Schools are seeing something similar. You know, we have always been working towards a more individualized education for children. You know, making sure that we have the resources to highlight a child's talents, and also help with additional resources to identify where a child's slipping and make sure that they're caught up. AI gives us tools that, quite frankly, we haven't had at this robust level before, where we can individualize education to give a child an extraordinary opportunity to excel. And we've done a fantastic job with the tools we have, and this just highlights that ability to continue to improve. So we're excited about what this is going to look like in education, giving our teachers additional tools to meet the needs of every child in their classrooms. Richard, with cities, what are some ways AI can be used to help with some of the services that you're providing in cities?
Sure. A number of our city officials are using AI, developing policies, personnel policies, rules and regulations for parks and recreation, kind of kickstarting that process, not writing the rules as a permanent or the final rule or policy, but getting that process starting, the kind of like a research. And then there's, always we have personnel shortages in our communities, and that's statewide, national, in all sectors. And I think AI can help fill that void in that lack of personnel doing certain aspects of local government. And our city officials just exploring. I mean, it's just a new
it's like
area.
having a research assistant.
It is exactly right.
Yeah.
It's because in the past, that's correct. You'd have to make calls and research. Here you can just do it in a matter of minutes or almost seconds, and that just really speeds up that whole process. And I know our city administrators are really using that for those kinds of administrative functions.
One of the things I've seen is for grant writing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good point.
You know, how many times have cities or counties or schools had to pay for grants where they had to hire people to write the grant for them? And if you're a grant writer, I guess it's a downside of AI.
Could be, yeah, right.
But being able to do all that research for your grant writing, and it's at your keyboard.
Yeah, that would be a powerful tool for sure.
Yeah.
And of course, with teachers in an education setting, helping with drafting lesson plans and other tasks like that, you could certainly cut down the time. You still need their expertise, right? You still need the expertise of that teacher, but some of the tedious work that goes along with those activities could be reduced.
Melissa, what kind of concerns schools have with AI? I mean,
yeah, well, in terms of school boards and the upcoming election, we do have some concerns, like you, with our candidates being subjected to some misinformation and disinformation that's generated by AI. Now, that's not something new. We all know, sitting at this table, there has been a lot of disinformation, especially in recent years, that's been circulated to impact elections, especially local elections.
Right.
But AI is going to take that to another level, as you both have already reflected on, and it's going to impact school boards just like it is both of your memberships. And so, again, it emphasizes the importance of us working together to educate our communities about what is a deep fake, how can you do a better job of identifying misinformation and disinformation, whether or not it's generated by AI. We ought to all be tethered to the truth instead of trying to be influenced by stuff that isn't accurate or isn't factual. So, we're concerned about those tools that are out there that could impact a community that's unaware that AI is taking this to a more realistic level than what we've seen in the past. Right. So we've identified some concerns with AI, and this is an ever-evolving state of technology, right? But where are we with regulation at the state and the federal government, and what support would be helpful in terms of information and or any kind of parameters that could be set to help us at the local level with the impact of these negative AI implications?
Well, we're not currently discussing that in our legislature this session. There's nothing, on the table in our General Assembly. And in Congress, I don't think there's any much discussion in Congress.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, it's just, and that's where we really need some action for our nation to set those parameters for AI and its consequences for those that abuse artificial intelligence.
I think that's one of the pitfalls with all of this, is that like any new industry, it's largely unregulated.
Right.
And the problem with this is that so much of this is generated in countries that are not friendly to the United States. And so I think most people have a difficult time getting their arms around, well, what regulations do we put in place, and are they worth the paper they're written on? Mm-hmm. I think we have somebody coming up that's going to address some of those issues, but that's a really scary part to us. I know it has to be for you all as schools.
Absolutely. Like anything that's fed through the internet, it's really hard to regulate unless you have cooperation with every other entity, every other country that is, that's obviously churning information, utilizing the internet. So it's difficult to regulate. And we often get calls here at MSBA saying do something at a local board policy level. And while we do have policies that control, that give direction on what we can control, so much of this is outside of our control, right? So it's critical for us to educate our community members like we're doing today and our members as well as our constituents at the local level, so they have a better understanding of what we're dealing with in AI, and that we don't have control over all of the parameters of AI. But what we can do is educate on how to best protect yourself with what's available right now.
Melissa, I think that's a good point, because even if state and federal and international regulations and parameters are established, there's still going to be bad actors, and it's the individual that has to protect themselves, and it's educating
That's a great point.
and understanding
Really is.
that. So it's not just state and federal regulations. It's personal responsibility and activity on this.
Powerful point.
Yes, it is.
Well, that's a great transition. Steve mentioned that we have another voice on this matter that we're going to bring in from a legal perspective. We're going to look at some of the issues that impact some of the decisions we're making at the local level. Gretchen Shipley is an attorney with the F3 law firm. Gretchen calls California, the state of California, her home today, but she's a proud Missouri native and a graduate of Missouri Public Schools. She does considerable work on the legal implications of AI and other technology challenges that we have. And so let's hear what she has to say today.
Good afternoon, and thank you. My name is Gretchen Shipley, and I am a technology lawyer for school districts and public agencies. And I just want to thank MSBA for the opportunity to be here and meet with you all and talk about the legal implications of using AI. And I know the focus today is deepfakes and elections, and we're going to talk about that. But I also wanted to give you a few tips about general business operations of using AI as well. As you may have already learned today, it is not about AI is coming, what should we anticipate? The reality is it's already embedded into our everyday lives. What we really need to be focusing on is looking at AI in our business operations, not only adopting new programs, but our existing programs when they get upgraded with AI. What type of things should we be looking for? What kind of safety practices should we be putting in place? And because I'm a lawyer, I'm looking to reduce your legal liability. And so I want to help you with some process and procedures to address any potential red flags and how to spot those red flags. And then again, we're going to wrap up with getting into elections and what that's going to look like. So the first thing I want to mention is that AI is not just the responsibility of your tech department. It is going to impact all areas of your public agency operations. You may have staff wanting to use AI tools for efficiency purposes, like note-taking tools. Or with schools, I know we have a lot of school districts participating today. It may be that they want to create lesson plans. It's far more efficient to do it through a ChatGPT or generative OpenAI. However, it may create labor implications. Your union might want to say they want to bargain the issue, but also there's data privacy concerns. If it is open AI and you are putting into a note-taking tool information about your community members or a student information is private. Medical records are private. There's financial information as private. And when you put it into open generative AI, you may be violating people's privacy rights. So we just want you all to flag that and be cautious and make sure your staff is trained and understands that they need to make sure they're not putting personally identifiable information into open generative AI. The other area where we're seeing it come in is your leadership team. It could be your business team, your technology team, operational purposes. A lot of surveillance systems are starting to use AI, and it's wonderful if we can make schools safer and cities safer, because AI has the capability to detect, let's say, guns more easily than the human eye. However, again, we need to be thoughtful about make sure we're providing the right types of notice and consent if we're going to be conducting surveillance. Same with note-taking. If you're going to put on a recording device for a communication, you need to make sure that you have the appropriate notice to the other party and their permission in some cases. And then again, in the case of students for our school district attendees, there's a ton of educational software that they may want to use things like ChatGPT for educational purposes. And a lot of school districts right now are navigating to what extent they allow students to use it in the classroom and when it takes away from the academic integrity and, when it's used for cheating versus when it's used in a positive way. Finally, the greatest potential for AI benefit I see in the education space and in the community is really the enhancements and accommodations they can offer to special education and disabled community members. But again, we want to make sure that the cities, the counties, the school districts are really evaluating these tools and making sure that they are not violating the privacy of the users. So, for example, if a staff member wants to use a note-taking tool to develop an individualized education plan for a disabled student, it may be that they are putting in that student's personally identifiable information, their student records, their disability status. And if it's an open generative AI, they may have violated that student's privacy, just in which case you would need the parent's permission before doing that. So just a few words of caution, but the purpose of this slide really is just to say it's not just a technology issue, it is all areas of your agency's operations. You should all be coming together as a leadership team to talk about the way in which AI is already in use or you want to incorporate it and what kind of policies and procedures you can put in place to make sure it's being used responsibly. It's all about balance. Yes, there's a potential for misconduct. We're going to talk about things like deep fakes. I had mentioned academic dishonesty, but there's so much positive potential and so many, not only efficiency, but educationally. And so we need to find that right balance. And by finding that balance, it's going to be putting procedures and policies in place so that everybody understands what the expectations are on how AI is used within your organization. So I have 5 safety tips I wanted to run through. The first easy one to take away to your organization is protect personally identifiable information. If we're using a platform that has open generative AI, it's simple. Staff, students, community members, don't put your personally identifiable information in there because we really don't know who it's going to be reshared with and how it can be used. Or at least make sure they know that they're doing so knowingly and that they consent to it. The second tip for your organization is to have a system and process that you are vetting the tools, the software, the resources that your organization is implementing. So somebody should be responsible for vetting the terms and conditions. If you have a county council or a city attorney, they may be involved in doing a legal review, or you have a tech team that does a data privacy review. That's part of the work we do as attorneys for school districts and public agencies, as we have a streamlined process to go in and vet terms and conditions of various software. So we can make sure that they are safe tools that are being put in the hands of the community and the students and staff. The third tip here for the safety tools is notice. So I mentioned some of your software does automatic updates and they're embedding AI. And when you switch from a closed environment, like let's say educational software used with students, to then incorporating open generative AI, it may exceed the scope of what you originally contracted for or purchased, and it may change the privacy settings and the parental consent requirements. So some organizations are affirmatively asking for notification from the AI software companies that they're notified really explicitly on any open generative AI updates, so it doesn't catch them by surprise. The fourth tip here is threat monitoring. So we work with AI software companies that are putting a lot of AI chatbot tools directly onto cell phones of users, consumers, staff, and students. And with school districts in particular, there usually is a duty to monitor student use of technology or a duty to supervise those students if it's educationally related. So if that's the case, to what extent is either a school district or a city obligated to monitor for threats? And of course, we want to make sure that if you have the capability to monitor for self-harm or a potential school shooting, that there's actually a means in which to intercept the threat and then respond to it, that you have a process in place for response and prevention. That's something we also work on with school districts and agencies on threat monitoring and response protocols, because frankly, there's a big legal liability there if you are not monitoring or you are monitoring but fail to appropriately respond. And then the last piece is, especially for the school boards that might be participating here today, collecting student data through open generative AI changes the consent requirements. So typical educational software, you don't need parent permission because it's part of your curriculum and instruction. And there's limits on who it's reshared with. It's only used within the school community. But open generative AI is resharing it in a way that under a federal Education Privacy Rights Act, it's called FERPA, would require parental consent. And so I have sample consent forms if that's something anybody's interested in. My email address is on this presentation. Some key components of any type of consent. Again, talking about the cities and the counties also. If you're going to be using an open generative AI tool, if you want to provide notice and consent, what would that look like? The purpose and benefits of the AI tool, an explanation of what data is being collected, how it might be reshared. And the lawyer in me says, go ahead and put a liability waiver in there while you're at it. Okay, policy. Many agencies are looking to adopt policy. And the reason why is your staff needs to understand what their responsibilities are. We don't want people willy-nilly adopting tools that might violate people's privacy or not be a safe tool. We also need to be able to hold people accountable if there's misconduct. And in doing that, you usually look back to whatever your policy and procedure is that you have in place. So here's some key elements of AI policy to include equity. I mentioned putting an AI chatbot to your phone. That's great, that's efficient, but it assumes all the users have a phone or that they don't have a disability and that they can engage with it. We encourage that if you're going to put AI chatbot on students' phones, it should also be available on the district website or on their Chromebook that they might have, because it needs to be equitably available to all students or community members. The next piece that is important to remember is that AI can be inherently biased. And so if this is being used in your community or for educational purposes, it's incumbent upon the public agency to make sure that you are not producing and turning around and producing content that is biased. We don't need any sort of discrimination claim or anything of that nature. Accuracy, as you may have heard, AI has the ability to hallucinate. I see this in my legal practice. When I put research, let's say, into ChatGPT, it will just make up the name of cases. And so when your teams are doing research, make sure that, let's say your staff is using it for a lesson plan, that it is not making up the names of battles from the Civil War, that they actually are accurate. So that's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that the content is accurate. And other policy tips, whatever your data privacy evaluation process is, go ahead and make sure that people in your organization are following that process. If permission is needed, such as parent permission, include that as an element. Your organization may want to evaluate whether use of AI triggers any sort of duty to bargain with your union of the terms and conditions of their employment. And then finally, obviously, we want a prohibition on misconduct. So those are some policy considerations. And as I mentioned, I wanted to dive into the election and the legal issues surrounding that. So I know we're talking about deep fakes. I have Ms. Taylor Swift up here on this slide. And just to show you how current this is, let's see what deep fakes we have of the week. We have had robocalls. I think it was in New Hampshire with Joe Biden's voice. That was a deep fake. There has been advertising here with Taylor Swift selling cookware that she did not authorize. And very frighteningly, just this week, there has been pornography with Taylor Swift's face on it. That was a deep fake. So we've actually even had this in our legal practice. We had a case where 2 kindergarten teachers were reading a storybook to their students and they recorded it on their website. So at night, the students could play it back. And some bad actors came in and they used their voices, took a voice imprint. And so the way these deepfakes work is you can use a voice imprint or a video imprint and regenerate the voice or the video to say whatever you like. And in that case with the kindergarten teachers, they put pornographic audio over the book that they were reading in their own voices. And it was very upsetting to the teachers. And obviously it went down the disciplinary path, but it happens, whether it's in the school environment. It could just be naughty teenagers. But, with elections coming up, it's understandable how concerning this is going to be or is for elected officials. So huge potential for the misinformation campaign. And what do we do about it? How can we prevent it? I think the first step is, how do you identify it? And how do we convey to the community how to look out for it? So a few tips I put in here, there are detection technologies in development. So I would talk to your tech team about whether or not that's something you want to explore adopting. One thing I personally notice is I can spot a deep fake typically, especially in the audio file, because of the quality. Many of them do not have top quality. The images kind of look photoshopped, or the audio file sounds very monotone and robotic, but it's improving and it's getting better and better all the time. It is, I think, important in this day and age that we encourage our community about, if something doesn't sound right or sound real, to be skeptical and have a process to verify. If you are running an election campaign, your contact information for your staffers should be widely available, that if people have questions or concerns about your content, that they could reach out and do a verification, and about the dangers of misinformation. And we're seeing it. I mean, the fact that it is in the national news and in the discussion that misinformation campaigns are here. Hopefully it is already naturally causing that skepticism and encourage people to go through that verification process. But it is more critical than ever, and we're having to do it on a very local and grassroots effort. There is a current race to regulate this topic. It is the most pressing aspect of AI that we are seeing on a legislative level, that they want to legislate and prohibit deep fake content. And I don't know that that will be up and running before your April election, but certainly I think before the presidential election in the fall, there may be more consequences for the actual platforms that they prohibit the deep fakes. But, what can you do? How can we empower you all if you are the victim of a deep fake? It seems like it's hard to identify who created it and how to prevent it. But the advice that I can provide is, of course, report it to the platform. If you have legal counsel, or, a city or a county might have in-house counsel. I do this regularly for organizations. I write cease and desist letters to have things taken down. You can do what's called an injunction, where you go into court and you get a court order to have something taken down. And certainly you can work with law enforcement. And it's not just a misinformation campaign. It is a true legal violation. It can be libel, slander, defamation, harassment, fraud, impersonation. The consequences for this type of misconduct are severe, but it is when you are in the thick of it and you're the victim of it, you just want to know, how can I get it taken down? And what kind of legal threats can I put against these people to force them to get it taken down right away? I want to also caution you all about, as much as I'm saying you may be the victim of deepfakes, please do not feel tempted to actually engage in it against your opponents or even yourself. I mean, it could potentially be misrepresentation to put yourself in a deepfake that presents you in a positive light, but certainly your opponents in a negative light. I am very familiar with folks, even in Missouri, going to federal prison for campaign fraud based on their campaign mailers at the time. And so the consequences are severe, and they are not taken lightly by law enforcement. So the case that I mentioned, it was actually a classmate of mine in Missouri. And my understanding is that it was a staffer put together a misinformation mailer. And so it could just as easily be, you might have a young staffer for your campaign. Maybe it's a high school kid or a college kid, and they're real techie and getting creative. And you're so busy, it's down to the wire. You might not be paying attention, but it ultimately falls on the candidate. So I can't caution you enough to make sure that you're training your staffers about the risks and the penalties and the consequences of what is ultimately election fraud or misinformation. If you have questions, I have my contact information on here, but I also have some free resources, especially for some of the school boards that might be on here. I mean, the type of work that I do day in, day out is I draft the policies, we do the contract review for the software companies, we evaluate for data privacy compliance, and we do training either in person or virtually for your staff. We are happy to support you and your organization. And then something else just coming down the pike, just to give you a heads up about, and we're working with MSBA on this as well, that we are currently waiting for the U.S. Supreme Court to rule on public officials' use of their social media accounts. And that is something where we wrote the brief, and I recently attended oral argument with the U.S. Supreme Court. So stay tuned for more information coming out from MSBA on that. And again, if you all have any questions, if I can help you with your policies, procedures regarding AI with elections, or just in your business operations, feel free to reach out. And thank you again to MSBA for this opportunity.
Thank you, Gretchen, for that valuable insight. Before you start the Q&A, I wanted to tell you that you'll be receiving an email from Mark Henderson later today, It will contain a short survey over this webinar. We need your feedback. Did it meet your needs? What other information would you like for us to provide? That email will also contain some resources for you to educate yourself and others about AI and deepfakes in relation to the local elections. Let me stop here and thank these two fantastic partners. Thank you for your partnership today on this critical topic, but also the ongoing relationship that we have in looking at issues that are impacting our local officials and how we can better serve them. So Steve and Richard, thank you.
Thanks to both of you for being here. To the Missouri Association of Counties, it's so important for us to be involved in an organization that represents almost 10,000 locally elected officials that all are working to make sure the trains run on time and that things happen when they're supposed to happen. And partnerships like this have been very productive in the past, and I'm sure we're going to do more and more great things together. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Melissa. The local leaders partnership is so important. We have so many common issues that are important to our communities. We represent the same constituents, and it's just so important that we move in the same direction. And I value our friendship and our relationship. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, you both have said this, but you know, it is exciting to know that we represent the largest group of elected officials in the state of Missouri, and we're exclusively focused on how we do a better job individually and together in serving the needs of Missourians, where the rubber meets the road at the local level, right? So all of us have that same priority, that we want our citizens to have the best service possible. And so again, MSBA definitely sees this as a high priority to maintain this relationship and partnership together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.